Before we start, I want to thank you for tuning in. If you're enjoying this content and would like to stay up to date with new episodes, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and turn the notifications button on. And if you'd like to support this content, then I would appreciate a review or comment if you're listening to this on a podcast platform. Enjoy.
I always say the most important negotiation we have is the peace negotiations with ourselves.
Oof, that's nice. That's powerful.
To accept ourselves the way we are, where we are. And it's from that point of acceptance and peace that we can then start making changes.
Welcome to a new season of the One Day Podcast. I'm your host, Omar Al-Majali, and each week I'm here to discuss powerful concepts around business, mindset, or life, and often share the stage with some of the brightest and most interesting minds of the Middle East to help me do so. Happy to have you here. Enjoy this one. Welcome to a new episode of the One Day Podcast. Today we're going to deep dive into a very interesting topic that every single human on earth can benefit from, and it's the power of negotiation. We are always negotiating, whether we're conscious of it or not, and whether we're doing it with ourselves or the people around us. It's an undeniable skill that if we manage to exercise it well, it can get us to places. To talk about this, we decided to bring the best of the best, as our guest today is one of the most influential negotiation professional globally, Lousin Mehrabi, who is also an international speaker, a trainer, and an advisor in negotiations, emotional intelligence, and leadership. She works with CEOs, decision makers, and corporations from all around the world to help them tap into their potential and optimize on their performance and the performance of their teams. Welcome, Lousin.
Thank you. It's very nice being here.
Great to have you here. I always say that this is a special episode, but this is actually a special episode because it's the first one I have physically with a guest. So thank you for coming over. I know you came from the other side of town. It makes it more special. This episode is going down in history for that.
Oh, well, it's an honor to be here. Thank you for having me here. It looks beautiful.
Thank you so much. I'm going to start with you because you are a graduate, Lousin, of 3 business schools. You hold 4 nationalities. You speak 5 languages. So how about you break it down for us? Because, I speak 2 languages and, holding on the third by a thread. Tell us more.
Well, I don't have that much credit for it. I grew up with most of it. So I am Armenian. So I speak Armenian to my parents. I was born in Iran. So I picked up Farsi. I forgot kind of a little bit, but I can still understand. And then we moved to the Netherlands where I grew up. So I speak Dutch. And then I decided to live in France. So I learned French and English.
Where do you, if I ask you where's home, what is
Dubai is home.
Oh, Dubai is home.
Yeah.
Oof,
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. I love this place. I'm very grateful that I can live here. It's brought wonderful opportunities for my family life, for my work. It's a wonderful place to be. The weather is great.
Yeah.
Of course, you can complain sometimes it's too hot, but you have good and bad in every city and every country.
Yeah.
And the overall balance, I think it's a wonderful place to be.
It lures you in. You think you come here for a year, I'll test it out.
Yeah.
You end up staying 2-3 years, and then next thing you know, 10 years pass and you're still here. It is a charming city. It offers a lot of convenience that a lot of places around the world do not offer. And you start appreciating the good in it.
Absolutely. With young children especially, it's a great place to be.
Yeah.
I've lived in different countries, 11 cities, and it wasn't home because I wasn't from that place. I was born a foreigner, but here, since everybody is not from that place,
it makes a difference.
85% of it, it's just home for everybody, home far away from home, but it has become home. I truly feel good here. I can be an ambassador for Dubai. I love this place.
Yeah, no, and it has something for everyone, right?
Yeah,
for every single demographic, there's something. My brother has just moved here recently, and his wife came here to see whether it's actually a city that can accommodate kids. And she knows Dubai, but she doesn't know it with kids, and she fell in love with it. And she's like, honestly, this place does nurture the ecosystem to have kids here. And you can raise families here. I never thought that Dubai would be like a hub or an important city in my life as much as it really does. I can see myself living here for a long time.
I can see myself living here forever.
Yeah. This is turning into a Dubai marketing episode. We need to get paid for this. So before I jump into negotiations and all of that, I want to have some pretext into your career background. I know that you were an investment banker before, and then something pulled you towards negotiations.
Yeah.
Tell me about why changing careers. And I always ask this question to every guest because careers, they represent a huge part of our lives, and these decisions, these micro decisions, it's always, I always like to learn and hear out other people's experiences and these shifts that they take in their careers. So I always like to ask this question intentionally. So tell me about your decision, maybe your life pre-negotiations. How did that look like?
Yeah. Well, I started working very early, very early. I was 13, where I had my first part-time job. And in the Netherlands, it's quite common to have a part-time job. So I was 13, did a lot of little things, whatever you can do at a young age. And when I was 18, I had my first serious job in a bank. But I got into finance by coincidence. I was just looking for any job to pay for my studies. And that finance job turned out to be really good. It was 24 hours a week. I did that for 2 years. Loved it. And then I moved to Paris to study, which was supposed to be a 1-year exchange program. And then 2, 3, 4, 14 years passed. So it wasn't planned deliberately. And when I was there, I wanted to stay longer. So I was looking for an internship. So the logical step would be to look for in finance, because that's where I had my experience. So again, a bit by coincidence, I ended up in finance again. So it wasn't out of love for finance. It wasn't a deliberate choice. Maybe. It was out of what I needed to, what was needed. So came in finance, first investment bank, second investment bank, competitor bought me over. You know how that goes.
Yeah.
And then I had a short break. I had a child and went back into finance again, but then the stock exchange part of it. And I loved it. I was always doing sales, negotiations, strategy, relationship management, that type of work. And at the stock exchange, they brought in 2 professional negotiators to train me and my colleagues, obviously. And that was the best training I've ever had. And there, all of a sudden, I was learning from the experts that negotiation is not something that you can improvise. It's something that we all do. So it's not a matter of if we do it, it's a matter of how well we do it.
Yeah.
And they have all these expert techniques, some from the FBI, some from their own experience and the theory. And it's such a wide topic because it's human behavior, it's psychology, it's influence, it's persuasion.
Yeah.
All the things that we use
without being conscious
of it. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I absolutely loved it, loved the way they were doing the training. And at the end, we had to do a negotiation test, and I happened to have a high score. So I was like in their radar, and they asked me, would you like to be a consultant for us and provide these trainings? But, I was quite closed-minded, I guess, but saying, I already have a job. So that opportunity passed. And then life advances. I was fed up with finance, didn't feel aligned with the values anymore. So stopped, did an executive coaching program to continue this journey of learning about human behavior and psychology and why do we do things the way we do it. And then finished that, launched my own company of saying, now I'm going to be a freelance, leadership trainer and coach. I did that in February 17, and in March we had some bad personal news, which we will maybe cover. And then that brought us to Dubai. And then I picked up the coaching here, and then those trainers who had trained me back then reached out to me and said, Luz, would you like to become our negotiation trainer there? And now it was the perfect timing. And I said, yeah, of course. So I joined them. It's called ADN Group, based in Paris, and we provide now trainings and masterclasses and consultancy for anything that's complex negotiation. So anything where a disagreement is not an option. So my expertise is in business negotiations, but within the company we do hostage situations, suicide negotiations, diplomatic. We collaborate with the frontline negotiators, the United Nations. So it's that's very crazy. High level crisis situations.
It's a wide spectrum indeed, it seems like. There's something you mentioned there that I want to maybe zoom into. You said, I left finance because I was out of alignment with the values it offers. And I feel like a lot of us live this life, although we feel that we are out of alignment with the places where we work, we still decide to be passive about it. And a lot of people just don't take any action. 10 years pass by and they think it's too late now to make these career changes. What are some of the red flags that you think people should be conscious of if they're in a place that is out of alignment with their values or what they want to do? Is it cliche to follow your purpose or your passion? Is it too late?
Well, I'm very happy we're talking about it now. Back then, we weren't talking about it that much.
Yeah.
And I think I dragged along for years and years and years. And I was ignoring the red flags. They were there, definitely. One of the red flags was physical. There were several times I woke up, I literally couldn't get up. My back was completely blocked. So that's your body talking to you. And I was like, oh, it's something physical, get some painkillers and go to the office. Extreme fatigue I had. And I thought, well, it's normal, working long hours, all this noise on trading floors. It's normal that I'm so tired. But if you're doing something that you truly love, you're not going to be dead tired.
Yes.
And not for months and months and months. That the only thing you can do when you come home is sleep.
Yeah.
So that's another red flag. I really worked myself into a burnout. So those are all red flags. And why? Because there was a voice inside of me that says, you don't belong here. You don't belong here. This is not imposter syndrome or something, but this is not what you're supposed to do. You weren't made for this or whatever. I mean, even at school, I sucked at finance. I sucked at math. I wasn't good at it at all. So I don't know how I ended up there.
Me too. I studied finance and economics and I'm bad at math. I really am.
No, I studied it. I studied finance.
Me too.
But
and I don't know why.
I wasn't naturally good at it. But the part that I loved from my work in finance was when I had to travel around and explain how structured products work. It was, of course, to make investors trade in it, but the explaining part, the sharing knowledge part, that's what I truly loved. Exactly. Yeah. So now as a trainer, I'm sharing knowledge, I'm teaching, and that's the part that I really love. So that kind of kept me going, and the traveling, I was all the time between Paris, Amsterdam, Brussels, Portugal a little bit. So it had a nice aspect. It's not that I hated all of it, but the main thing was there was a voice inside of me that says, there's something else. There's something else. And it took me a long time before I actually listened to that voice. And then it's also what's beautiful about life is if you're too stubborn to listen,
yes, it will show you in different ways.
It will show you, whether physically or something changing. When I was pregnant with my second child, everything changed. We literally moved office from one building to outside Paris, so it wasn't as nice anymore. My job description changed, the management changed, everything changed. I came back, it was like looking at a new company, and I even had more that alien feeling of what am I doing here? So that pushed me. And then the company came with a very generous offer for people who were voluntarily willing to leave. They had this massive training budget and that kind of stuff so that people would be able to, find something else.
Nice.
So I raised my hand and took the money and left.
Yeah. It's crazy that people ignore these signs, and it always has to, we wait until it's physical and until there's the burnout for us to wake up. I mean, why don't we just listen to these red flags earlier on in the process?
I know guess it's comfort, it's money, it's lack of expertise in another field. It's not knowing what else to do, and then comfort is dangerous.
I know. I always say that paychecks are morphines, that keep us sedated. Yeah. And the corporate system, unless you're really passionate about what you're doing, I believe it's a trap. If you're not really passionate about what you're doing. I agree. Because you're not creating value beyond the strict, tight guidelines that are given to you.
Yeah. It's slowly changing though. There's hope. The new generation, I feel, doesn't...
I hope so. Oh yeah,
doesn't stick along too long if they don't like it. There might also be a certain lack of resilience and just go with the flow. But anyway, now people are changing more often. It's easier to change. Who does a career of 30 years nowadays, right?
Exactly.
It just doesn't happen anymore. So, and we get the opportunity to change and try things out. So I guess it's all about self-awareness and listening to yourself and asking yourself the right questions and then having the guts to act on it.
Yes. Good luck to businesses hiring Gen Zs and training them, because these people are not sticking around. If us millennials, they think that we're not worth the investment to to invest in training or train Gen Zs, it's going to be a completely different story. But
you have to talk to Gen Z differently. They are more aligned with values.
Yes, you have to accommodate to their needs.
Yeah, that is where leadership comes in. That same leadership that we had is simply not working. The authority way of doing things. No. So if I tell you and you execute, it just doesn't work anymore, especially with the new generation. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing that we see more and more emotional intelligence coming, that we talk about it. We talk about mental health. We talk about, at least starting to talk about it is
they're
the
becoming
first way
conscious
to
of these
break the
things.
stigma. Exactly. And then act upon it, etc. But leaders have to change as well. You cannot continue working the way we used to do 40 years ago, because the market is changing, the environment is changing, and people are simply not taking it anymore.
Yes, you better accommodate to this and understand this new generation so that you can cater to their needs, because otherwise you're not going to compete on talent.
And we can learn so much from them.
Yeah, of course. It's impressive that you actually made this shift to negotiations, and now you've established a whole brand for yourself around that. You're a thought leader. You studied it, you researched it, and you're one of the most recognized and sought after professional negotiators in the world, and it's exciting. So let's talk about that. I've actually always been.
Well, it's a beautiful title that I still can't grasp, but yeah, I was selected among many others to speak at the negotiation conference where they bring. Professional negotiators. So.
You know exactly how it happened. You just went after something that you like. I mean, honestly, and when you do that, sometimes life responds. And
exactly, when you do what you love, life responds well.
I agree. So we're gonna talk about negotiations now, because I've always been excited about it. Actually, there was a course at college that I wanted to take called negotiations that I was never able to sign up to. I've always FOMO'd about not taking it. So now I'm going to be all ears. I'm excited about this. It's an interesting topic, negotiations. I feel like it's an underrated topic.
Definitely.
Right?
Definitely. Yeah.
Because we do it all the time. We're not conscious of it. If people understand the structure around it, they can do better at it.
Yeah.
It's an amazing skill. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about, maybe defining negotiation. When would someone need to negotiate? Why do we even need to bother about negotiating in the first place?
Yeah, well, I love to see negotiation as a way to go from a disagreement to an agreement, which means you need a disagreement. So conflict, and by realizing and understanding that conflict is a good thing.
Okay.
Many people fear conflict. Many people fear disagreements, and they either stay quiet, pretend it's not happening, walk away from it, feel very stressed, become aggressive, one of those. But there's also a way of looking at it in an exciting way and say, we have a disagreement and we're going to take this journey together to come to an agreement. And that is what negotiation is. Negotiation is knowing what you want, knowing what you need, be open enough to understand that somebody else wants something else, and then say, okay, I want A, you want B, how can we find an agreement? That's it.
Nice. And there's always this misconception, maybe it's a misconception, I don't know, that negotiations, it's a zero-sum game. If I win, then you lose. Yeah. If you lose, then I win. Is that that true?
No, unfortunately, no. That is a belief system that many people have, unfortunately, the win-lose scenario, or even the win-win, which in reality is often win-lose. And there are different ways of looking at it, which is way more empowering. It's instead of saying, okay, this is the pie, we're going to cut it in half, you have half, I have half. I said, how important is this pie to you? How important is it to me? Can we make the pie bigger? Can we divide it in a way that makes sense and that you would walk away happy, I would walk away happy? Because half doesn't necessarily mean we will both be happy. What is the need? What do you want to do with the pie? And do you need all the ingredients of the pie? Maybe we can give you what's on top of the pie and I need what's below the pie. Think about it and come to an agreement. And that takes time, that takes energy, and that takes willingness to try to understand, what does the other person need? Not what do they say they want, not what do they think they want, what do they need? And if you're open-minded enough and you put in the effort and the time and the skills to try to understand what somebody needs, it's just this creative process of trying to then satisfy that need without necessarily giving into what they said they wanted, unless you've analyzed and understood, is that really what's at stake?
Nice. Let's put it into practical use, something that, let's bring it home. Sure. And assuming I want to negotiate a higher salary or a promotion with my boss, I think that's something that a lot of people relate to. How do I negotiate? What are some of the things, the parameters, the tips, the techniques that I need to think of as I approach this conversation? Yeah.
Well, first of all, having the guts to do it.
Okay.
There are many people who don't do it, and then you don't ask, you don't get.
That's like self-negotiation.
Exactly.
Have the gut. Okay.
Exactly. So that's the first. The second is prepare. do your homework. Don't just waltz in and say, I want 10% increase, right? You're going to do things properly. So prepare. Why do you want that need? It's number one thing. What need are you trying to satisfy? Is it truly more money that you want? Or is it more recognition? Would you feel that it's more fair because you've heard that colleagues are earning more? So is it the fairness aspect? Is it actually because you want to grow and you want another title? So is it actually the title that matters? Is it growth opportunities? Is it revenge because you wanted something you didn't get, so now you want the money? Be clear for yourself, first of all, why do you want it? You know, the start with why of Simon Sinek. We can apply it in every negotiation.
This book is somewhere here.
The book's somewhere.
Somewhere
Start with why. Why are you negotiating?
Yes.
What is it that you really need? And that's also a way to get rid of the ego. Because you say, what is it that I need? Not what the ego wants.
The higher self.
And therefore you calm the ego. And you say, I'm going to go into this negotiation to satisfy a need that I have. Then you do your homework. Is it normal what you're asking? Is it realistic? Has the company paid this to other people with this role, etc., etc.? If you can't find it internally, there are loads of studies to show, okay, this level of experience is this kind of salary, etc., etc. So try to gain information. You can ask colleagues. You can ask on a networking event. You know, not everybody's comfortable sharing, but some people are, and you only need one info, right?
Yes, yes.
Do your homework and make sure that it's realistic what you're asking compared to what's normally done. And of course you can try a little bit more, etc., but don't go beyond and ask for the moon, and then also get caught up in your own ego and then not be satisfied that you don't get the moon, whereas the stars were good enough. You know what I mean?
Actually, I mean, let's talk about that, because of the only thing that I thought I knew about negotiations is that you shoot for the moon and then you land somewhere in between.
Yeah, but that's crap.
That's crap.
Do you really
is that
need
bargaining? Is bargaining negotiation?
It's the way negotiation has always been taught, and I'm trying to change that stigma.
Okay,
what do you need the moon for? You know, that's the number one question you need to ask yourself. Do you really need the moon? Would you really be happy with the moon? Or is it the stars that you want? Are you trying to build something and you need stars for it? You see what I mean? Be clear on your need. And then you go in and then you see it as, again, going from a disagreement to an agreement. In order to do that, you need to collaborate. So you need to put yourself in their shoes and think, what might be important to them? Now, you as an employee, if you're negotiating your salary, what is important for your HR or boss or whoever, it's probably that you're motivated, it's that you feel good, it's that you're going to bring in the best of yourself, it's that you're going to help the company perform better. Those are the main stuff. But then again, maybe not. So don't assume anything. Another tip I give, don't assume anything, but go and check it, you know, and say, this is what's important to me, what's important to you. What I was thinking of is maybe this and that, and then double check and verify to make sure that you understand what's the need of the other party. And then how can you work together to get both needs satisfied? That is the beautiful part of negotiation.
Like a win-win situation, getting to a win-win situation.
Getting to a situation where you walk away thinking it's fair and they walk away thinking it's fair. So it's not necessarily win-win, because again, with the win-win, they think about the cutting the pie in half, which I don't like at all. It's really, did I get my needs satisfied in a collaborative way, in a way that is respectful? Can we look each other in the eyes? Can I look myself in the mirror and say, it's okay what I did in terms of integrity, in terms of behavior, in terms of the way you were speaking? And can you be proud of yourself of how you conducted that negotiation? And walking into a negotiation where normally you don't, that's already something to be proud of.
Yeah.
And then the way you do it, obviously. So stay connected to the needs of the other party. Try to calm your ego. Stay focused on your needs and express it. Ask questions to understand what their need, and then how can we collaboratively come to something that's fair to me and is fair to you.
Nice. Have you always been a good negotiator? Is that something that you felt as an attribute that you had as a kid? Maybe you were brought up this way, or
I don't know if I was a good negotiator, but I know that I like it.
Okay.
And that is something that came to me out of survival reasons. I had to. No, it's not that catastrophic, but I grew up with a father that was extremely strict on certain things. So he raised us in the Netherlands, which is a new country for him. And in the Netherlands, it's like party time as soon as you're 12 or something. And he was like, wow, what's happening here with my daughters? And so my sisters would push me forward and say, go negotiate with daddy so that we can go out. And he was a tough negotiator. You know, I would go and say, daddy, can we go out? And the party starts at 12. And he's like, you're going to be home at 12:30. Like, what?
Oh,
Yeah, it's
shit.
not even
That's
worth going.
not going
He's like,
anywhere,
go at
yeah.
10. I said, but the door doesn't open before 12. So it was tough negotiations. And I had to think about, okay, how can I talk to him? And how can I connect to his needs? And his needs was obviously our safety.
Yes.
Okay, so I came up with, we're going to go out with this group. They're going to drive us back home or cycle back home with us, because that's what we did. And try to satisfy his needs for safety and his girls to be okay. You know, I promised him we're not going to drink, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I had to come up with those things to be able to negotiate with my dad. And I think that's where it all started. And then I remember once I was 15, 16, we went to the library with my sister. And I took a book called about lobbying. So again, I was 15, yeah. And my sister is like, Luz, why don't you just take books for your own age?
Yeah.
But this is fascinating. If you know how you can convince people,
Yeah.
you know? So yeah, I was always interested in it. And obviously we all do it. I wasn't aware that I was doing it that much. But for my job, I had to do a lot of sales and contract negotiations. So I was doing it. But when I got trained, I realized, my God, this is a real skill. There are so many things that you can do differently and better and have a massive result, that goes with it. So when that happened, I became interested in learning a lot more. So that's when all the books came in.
So the good news is that it's a skill that we can practice. It's
Definitely.
not necessarily for someone who's confident or an introvert versus an extrovert.
No.
This is a skill that anyone can do in any scenario, personally, professionally, whatever.
Yep, absolutely.
Nice. I also just heard and listened to your latest podcast episode, and it was with Chris Voss, this FBI negotiator, and you guys talk about one of the most important negotiations are the negotiations that we have with ourselves. That's internal dialogue that we have with ourselves.
Yep.
Whether it's this fear that we want to get over, or even, when you put your alarm at 5 a.m. and you want to wake up to the gym, there's a negotiation that's happening there.
Definitely.
Tell me more about that.
Well, I love that aspect, and I love that you recognize it, because many people don't. We all negotiate with ourselves all the time. All the time. Look at it as we all have a goal that we want to achieve, be it lose weight, go to the gym, stop smoking, whatever it is. And we know exactly what we have to do to achieve it. So it's not a lack of knowledge. Everything's out there on YouTube. We know what we have to do, and yet we don't do it.
Yeah.
We all have at least one of those goals.
Yeah.
So why is that? Right? So there's a part of us that wants to, and there's a part of us that doesn't want to. Yeah. And there is this inner dialogue happening, and the part that doesn't want to is stronger and wins. So if you become aware of that dialogue, and again, you apply exactly the same things. You listen to the needs of both parties. You emphasize, you have empathy for both parties, and you understand what is the fear, what is it that's blocking me, etc., etc. If you look at it that way, and obviously I have my negotiation glasses on, even the lenses, I can't even take them out anymore. I see everything through a lens of negotiation. So if you look at it that way, it really helps you increase your self-awareness, your self-respect, self-empathy for yourself. You become kinder to yourself. I always say the most important negotiation we have is the peace negotiations with ourselves.
Oof, that's nice. It's powerful.
To accept ourselves the way we are, where we are. And it's from that point of acceptance and peace that we can then start making changes.
We're so hard on ourselves. Even in therapy, they tell you that it's one thing to be going through a situation, and it's another thing to be self-criticizing yourself for feeling bad about it.
Exactly.
And this is the vicious cycle, and that's the pattern that we have to break. Just be more self-compassionate. Easier said than done, but if people are just aware of that, hopefully they work better at it. Now I want to maybe take a different turn, unpeel the layer on Lousin. And when someone sees you, Lousin, you've got this you exude strength and confidence and power, and it comes with the territory, being a negotiator, dealing with executives, sitting at round tables with leadership of organizations. Not only are you strong at work, but you're also extremely strong at home. You have been going through an unimaginably extremely tough situation ever since you heard the health news about your son, right? And so you're having to be strong throughout your day.
Yeah, I don't have a choice.
You don't have a choice. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about that because I'm sure it constitutes a huge part of who you are as a person. And also, I feel like when you talk about these things, there's healing for you, but there's healing for others. I'm sure that you're inspiring people from all around the world, parents, with your story. So can you tell us about that? Can you take us back to that moment when you heard the news? Just
Yeah, so
give us a background.
it's Alexander, my first child. When he was born, the delivery was very difficult, and he had to go in coma, etc. He came out of coma. They said everything is fine, but I had this mother instinct that told me something is wrong with him. Now, it wasn't anything, that they could observe. So we went from hospital to hospital, and everybody said everything is fine. But I felt something is wrong. Something is wrong. So when he was 5, we finally found the person that took us seriously and examined him. And they told us there is something wrong with him, but we don't know really what. And it's probably something with his muscles. So then, of course, you go on Google. And we went through the difficult period of diagnosis where they had to do a lot of analysis and a lot of hospital visits. And they told us 9th of June 2017, those dates you never forget, that he has Duchenne muscular dystrophy. So it's a progressive disease that slowly breaks down his muscles. There's no cure yet. Life expectancy is short, around 25. And slowly he loses all the muscle functions of his body. And the last one being the heart. Whenever the heart gives up, that can happen anytime between now and the age of 30, then he dies.
I'm so sorry to hear that. I'm sure that it was very, very tough. There's a before and an after this event in your life.
Definitely. And it was funny because when I was reading about it, before we had the diagnosis, that was exactly written that way. There is life before the disease and there's life after. And I didn't really grasp it back then. But now I do. Yeah, life completely changes. And it changes you if you let it, for the good or for the bad.
Does it get easier or does it get harder dealing with the situation, or is it ups and downs? And it's
I think if it was like they would say, I don't know, if he had an accident, for example, and he lost an arm, then it's a one-time event that you grieve and you accept and then you move on. In this situation, it's a progressive disease. So every time I accept that he lost the ability to walk or the ability to stand, which happened 2 months ago, the next phase is coming. And the next thing that he can't do anymore is around the corner. So I'm in this constant cycle of grief. I became an expert at grief. I know how it works, but it's never ending. And also the perspective that unless a miracle happens in the medical world, it's going to get worse and worse until he dies. And there's no perspective of he's going to cure in a year or something. You see, there is no cure. And that makes it really tough because you know that tomorrow is going to be worse. And you have to face that reality every day.
Oof, it's not easy at all, man. Really, and because of that, you guys moved from France, right? Not only that,
we decided to come to Dubai.
Uprooted yourself from France and you came here?
Yeah, we came immediately. Why? After the diagnosis, we decided because the doctor said there's nothing we can do. The doctor said he's going to live short. And the only thing that would benefit him was physiotherapy and sun. Well, physiotherapy you can get anywhere, but the sun, you can't. And Paris, where we were living, was right outside of Paris. It was a very hilly city. So I was like, how on earth is he going to be able to walk here or be in a wheelchair? It's just logistically difficult. So we had been in Dubai several times on holidays, and that idea just came in my head. And people, including family and close friends, really judged us on like, you're out of your mind and you're in shock and you don't know what you're doing. But I knew exactly what we were doing. We were going to give him the best life possible, however long or short possible. That every day, imagine he dies tomorrow, I want to be able to look myself in the mirror and say, I gave him the best life. And with best life, I'm not talking about bling bling stuff. I'm talking about the sun is good for him. There's sun here every day. The country is flat, so he can drive around in his wheelchair and everything is accessible. The school is really accommodating and inclusive. He's learning several languages. He's already speaking several languages at home. So he's really developing himself intellectually, etc. So for me, this is the best place on earth for him. And I'm proud that I can give that to him. And since I had the possibility to give it, then I give it. And that's a bit like the micro thing that I do every day. What is the number one thing that I can do to give him a better life? To make sure that he lives life fully. because there's this beautiful quote that says, and in the end, it's from Abraham Lincoln, and in the end, it's not the years in your life that count, it's the life in your years. So we're adding life to the years.
Wow. And that's incredible. And I'm sure that the growth that you guys are experiencing emotionally as a family and the resilience is significant.
Yeah.
How is he dealing with it? I mean, he was a 6-year-old when did he hear the full news, or did you guys like phase it out to him?
I told him immediately that evening. I said, listen, all the tests we've been going through, they finally have an answer, and they found out that there is a problem with your muscles. And doctors are working hard to find a cure. And we're going to do everything we can to help you. So we're here for you. The hospital is there for you, and the school is there for you. And I said, we finally understand why you were tired all the time. And we finally understand why you fall sometimes. So we have an answer, and that's great. And that's what I told him. I've never told him, and I'm afraid that one day he's going to listen to one of my podcasts. I've never told him that it's a fatal disease and that he chances are very high that he's going to die from this. That I've never said, because I want to give him, I don't want him to think about that. I want him to stay in the now where he is, where children are, which is very inspiring. He's in the now. And another thing that he really teaches me every day is the rapidity of acceptance that he has. It's crazy. I mean, when we moved here, he could do almost everything. 1 year later, he couldn't go up the stairs anymore. So we had to change the rooms and stuff. 2 years later, he couldn't really walk properly anymore. And he fell a lot, but he could still get up. Last year, he couldn't get up anymore. So then all of a sudden, everything changes. We can't leave him, play alone anymore, because if he falls, he can't get up. 3 months ago, he started really having difficulties walking, and 2 months ago he couldn't stand anymore. So now it's really tough physically. The simple things like going to the washroom and getting dressed. How do you do that when you can't stand? So it's this constant adaptation of, okay, what do we do now? And he does it so well emotionally that's inspiring me. He had, until the day he couldn't stand, which was November 17th, he had never complained about his disease.
Wow,
not once.
That's so mature.
And the kid complains about everything else, but not about his disease. And that evening, and I will share this for the first time, because it's the beauty of grief when you do it together. It might sound very crazy, but what happened that evening was, he was sitting at the dinner table. My husband was not there. He was traveling. And he said, Mom, can you help me up so that I go to the washroom? Sure. I help him up. He couldn't stand. He said, my leg is not holding me anymore. So I carried him to the washroom. And that's where, for the first time, he started becoming angry and say, I'm fed up with this. And when is my leg going to work again? And is my leg going to work again? And I didn't have an answer, because I simply didn't know. And then I carried him up and put him on the chair that we've built to do his shower. And what was beautiful was that he started asking me all these questions. Mom, is my leg going to work again? I said, honey, I don't know. We're going to do everything we can. Tomorrow we're going to go to physio again, and hopefully it's going to work again, but I don't know. And whether your leg works again or not, we're going to make the best of life anyway. And I was giving the shower, and he was sitting there, and he looked down and he cried. And I saw his tears, and I cried. But since there was the water, he didn't see me cry. And, the tears were flowing for both of us. And then at one point he looked up, he saw my tears, I saw his tears. And we just gave each other a hug. And going through that grief together in that moment was actually beautiful. And I look back on it with a smile, because it was heartwarming.
Heart to heart.
We were so connected of saying, it hurts. We don't know what's going to happen next, but we're going to do this together.
With all the pain, all the suffering that happens around us in the world, I do believe that there's a divine plan and a divine message behind everything. I do feel like everything happens for a reason. We might not understand it today, but at some point in the future, we'll get to and we're like, oh, okay, so now I understand why this happened in my life. I honestly look back on my life. Some of the darkest moments in my life have been the best, and have been the reason for why, I've expanded in some areas of my life. So I wanted to ask you, have you thought about that? Do you see a gift in any of this that's happening?
Mm. Well, it can also be dangerous to wanting to know why, because as you said, sometimes we don't get that answer until we're gone or ever. But there comes a point where you're going to have to answer the why in the most empowering way. Why does my son have this disease? I don't know. Will I ever know? Maybe, maybe not.
Mm.
So what can I do with it? How can I fill in the why in an empowering way? And I'm trying to do it. And that's why I'm sharing his story, because I'm like, I've been given a voice. I have a voice. I have a platform. I am a speaker. I love speaking. I love sharing stories. So why am I only sharing, success stories from negotiation, where I can also share his stories? And so I started doing that, giving inspirational talks about that and how it goes into negotiations with yourself and negotiations with life. And when I'm doing that, I really feel so fulfilled. And maybe there is a reason to that. I actually asked God. I disconnected with God for a while. I was so angry. But
Of course, there's like,
that's another story.
Normal.
But then one day I was so angry. He lost something else that he couldn't do anymore. And I was in tears and I was in rage and angry. And I told God, what do you want from me? Why is this happening? And
normal.
why does it keep
Super
happening?
normal,
Like, okay, I accepted that he can't walk anymore. Why do you do this then?
Yes.
I know it's part of the disease, but still I was in so much pain. And I said, what do you want from me? Just give me a signal, a word, or something. Give me a dream. Why do I have to suffer? And then I got this beautiful image of a feather, but the old feathers they used to write with?
Yes.
And I thought, man, you want me to write a book?
Really? Oh, I'm going to have to think about authoring a book on top of everything that I'm doing.
Yeah, but it was such a crystal clear message that I thought, okay, one day I'll write a book about all this.
One day you will write this book.
Yeah.
I would love to read that book. Yes, I feel like I like to think about these existential questions. Why are we here and stuff like that? And I feel one area to do with it has to do with purpose. And our purpose here is to serve others through our stories, through sharing, through being vulnerable. And you have a platform, and it would be an incredible thing for you to leverage that platform to, add a twist to your brand and maybe start talking more about these inspirational and
well, that's what I did with life negotiations. The whole idea was I'm connected and I learn from and collaborate with truly the world's best negotiators, the people who've done FBI negotiations for 30 years, like Chris Voss you mentioned, or Gary Nasner, his previous boss, business negotiations, United Nations, you name it. Truly master negotiators. But I call it life negotiations, and in every episode I ask them, how did negotiation skills help you face an adversity in your life? And are you willing to share an adversity? And that's where we really connect from human to human. And you see that behind the beautiful titles and or the muscles, there is a human that goes through difficulty. And how can we help with the skills that we know people who go through adversity, which is everybody on earth. So I'm trying to use it that way. And people have started booking me not to talk about negotiations at all.
Talk about these things.
But these things.
Yeah.
The inspirational part of how do you negotiate with life then? How do you negotiate with God, with adversity, with a disease, with anything that happens to you that you don't want?
Yeah.
But you have no choice. You have to go through it.
The other day I was stalking you. That's what I do with my guests. I research and I stalk them. And I was stalking your LinkedIn profile and I saw a post that you posted a month ago. I believe it was on the World Mental Health Day. Mm-hmm. And it was a picture. It was super, super heartfelt, very powerful message. It was a picture of you and your husband. I believe it was your husband, right? You're smiling in this picture. You're at like your goddaughter's event or birthday. Mm-hmm. And the first words or the caption says, it looks like a happy picture, ? It's far from it, because it's been a month since we heard about the news of our son. Mm. But here we are smiling and we have this front at this event. And I think you go on to talk about the importance of emotional resilience and the importance of, I believe, celebrating life despite pain, right? We just talked about that, but there's also a very important message that you talked about that really touched my heart. And it's about be kind to people, because you don't know what battles they are struggling with. We all, we're all, every single human on earth, we all have these battles, these insecurities that we're fighting, but it's easy for us to put these smiles because we don't want to be vulnerable. We don't want to come across as weak.
Yeah.
And talk to me about this theme.
Well, that post went completely viral.
2 million views, 2+ million views, right?
It went crazy, but that's exactly because everybody's struggling with something. And as you said, we're putting this mask on and thinking, but us deciding to go to that birthday was a deliberate choice of saying, we're heartbroken here, but it's her birthday. So we are going to celebrate life despite the pain. We're going to celebrate her life and put our pain on the side for a second. But when we went there, the beautiful thing was most of the people on that party is obviously friends and family who know us and who had heard about Alex. And it was the first time that we came together. So it was both celebrating a party and supporting each other. Yeah. So it was a beautiful event. Had we decided, we're not going because we're so sad, which we had every choice to do, right to do if we wanted it to, we wouldn't have had that beautiful moment. So sometimes you do have to deliberately push yourself through the tears and get dressed and do that makeup on, whereas you don't feel like it, and go and not fake it, but be with it. Be with it. And you don't have to be with pain alone. That's what a lot of people do as well. But it's all these stigmas, we shouldn't be unhappy or be positive and that kind of bullshit. No, be you. And if in that moment you're sad, then you're sad.
Yes. I was just going to say, aren't you tired of being strong at work and strong at home? Like, do you get these days where fuck it. Today I'm weak and I want to cry it out and I'm sad and I don't want to be strong today?
Of course I have it. I have it all the time. But I don't feel like I'm strong. I feel like I'm choosing to show up. And of course I have moments where I cry quite regularly, but I don't have fears of crying. The tears don't frighten me. I'm like, oh, there you are again. Okay, let's go. I just let it happen. But it's not that long. If we don't fight it, it's not that long. They just come up. You're like, okay, there's sadness. What am I grieving at the moment? Okay, let's get it out with. Wash my face. And we
get
move
on with life.
Yeah.
That's part of
But I don't fight it. Like, if you want to cry, I cry. If I want to have an evening, lazy Netflix evening, I have a lazy Netflix evening. I stopped judging myself. Well, I still do, of course, a little bit, but less than before. I used to be horrible with myself and have these extreme high standards and then kick myself, for not attaining it. And now I'm like, no, you're dealing with so many things, trying to keep all the plates in the air and some fall and break and fuck it.
Yeah. Who cares? And that's called emotional intelligence, which we're going to talk about. But before we talk about emotional intelligence, maybe we wrap up this chapter with a question that I have. And also, that might sound a weird question, but in what ways are you optimistic about the future for your family, despite all that's happening? Is there any sort of optimism?
Naturally, I have to say I wasn't born an optimistic person. I had to learn this.
Ooh,
I have tendency of looking at the problems and what might go wrong, etc., and then prepare myself for it. Okay. So I don't know if I'm optimistic today. I would say I am joyful, which is different. I am very grateful. I decide to look at every difficulty that happens, like, okay, what does work well, what does go well, and look at the things that I still have and can control. But what's beautiful about the whole optimistic thing is that what gives me hope, and this might sound strange, it's not, for example, if we think about my son, because obviously that's my biggest pain. It's not hope that a cure will come and a cure will heal him, etc. I'm not desperately running after.
You're not attached to anything, the results.
Well, of course, I make sure I know everything about what's happening in the medical world, and if there is a clinical trial to be able to, if he's eligible for it, to make sure that he's on the list, etc., etc. But I've knocked on all the doors, and he isn't eligible at the moment for any clinical trial. So that's something that's just homework that has to be done. But I'm not desperately hanging on to a cure is coming. When is it coming? And the trial,
you won't be disappointed.
No. Okay. What I am hopeful about, what gives me hope and strength, is knowing that whatever happens, I'll get back up. It's the resilience.
Yes. It's a muscle.
So if that means one day I have to bury my child, I know that I will go through it. I will cry for maybe years, but one day I'll get back up.
Yes.
And there's life continuing, and there's still my daughter, and there is the rest of life. So it's the idea of whatever happens, I'll get back up, that keeps me going.
That's a powerful thing, by the way, to have. That's going to get you through life in everything.
Yeah.
It's a muscle.
Because in the end, we do
Yeah.
get back up. And
Yeah.
whether we get back up emotionally or not is a choice.
Yeah.
And again, very tough to say. But you staying in depression for something that happened 20 years ago is a choice.
Yeah, totally. So it's emotional intelligence. Again, I go back to this point. That's another whole different area and field that you speak on and you studied and you research. And let's maybe talk about it before we wrap up this conversation. Emotional intelligence. It's a different spin to what we've been talking about. We're gonna keep it light. What is emotional intelligence? Why is it important today? How can we enhance our emotional intelligence today? And I wanted to talk about it because people are starting to recognize the importance of EQ over IQ.
Yep.
Back in the day, the old model of thinking, people would look at IQ. Not today. Things are super different today. People are looking at EQ. So I thought...
Well, it's evolving. We're not there fully yet, and both are important, but people are realizing that with IQ alone, you're not going to make it. And EQ, what is it? So emotional intelligence is all the skills, all the behavior. It's the way you face life versus yourself, versus others, and versus life. How do you stand in life? So it's all the things that you can't measure with IQ. It's things like empathy, flexibility, agility, resilience, emotional expression, self-awareness, independence, meaning emotional independence of what others think of you, etc. There's a lot of elements that you can put in 3 groups. How are you standing with yourself? Do you know yourself? Do you like yourself? Do you have goals, etc.? How do you stand with others? How is your relationship? How is your communication? How is the empathy? How do you connect with others? And then with life. So are you flexible? Are you not flexible? That kind of stuff. All that together is emotional intelligence, and that can be measured. And
it's very important. It's like, or we can also call it mindset. Or mindset could be like that's why this podcast is business, mindset, and life. Because I don't feel like you can be one without the other. You can't be that professional without being this human. You can't be this human without having emotions and dealing with them. So it has to be a business. And I always get this question. I mean, is it a business podcast or it's both? It's everything. Because it's everything. This conversation we had is everything, right? Definitely. It's holistic. It's Lousin. And we're not one thing and not the other. Are there any tips on books or master classes on emotional intelligence that people you think, something that has maybe benefited you that you recommend?
There are many books. It's starting with wanting to know about it and realizing that emotional intelligence drives us just like negotiation in every single day. So if we can improve elements on that about ourselves, it's going to benefit us, but also everybody around us and our work and our career, etc., etc. So it's so worth investing in emotional intelligence. And nowadays you can learn so much online for free or for a few bucks. It's very easy to learn about it. One of the books that I like a lot is called Emotional Agility.
Nice.
That one I recommend. The work of Daniel Goleman, of course, he changed the landscape a bit. So yeah, there's so much work, but it was Daniel Goleman's book that made it mainstream, but it had been studied before by other people. But I personally had difficulties going through his book because it's very detailed and stuff. But that's why emotional intelligence, emotional agility has been written in a more easier way to read and understand, and also follow her, of course, on LinkedIn and Facebook or wherever you are.
I'll put that in the description.
But yeah, just look for it, and there are now more and more people talking about it, reading about it, and sharing about it. So yeah, start getting interested, and it will come to you.
How do you switch off? You seem to be like an extremely busy person.
I don't.
Emotional intelligence, negotiations. You don't?
I don't, and that's one of my weaknesses. Definitely, I don't switch off. I work my butt off until
all day.
What is it, like 2 o'clock in the morning? Yeah, and then I'm exhausted. I literally have like energy for 5 minutes to get my makeup off, and I'll go to bed.
No, like how we just talked about burnout. You want to avoid another burnout, don't you?
I think I'm not going to have a burnout because I decided that another burnout or depression is simply not an option. So that's not happen. That's one. Two, I love what I do. It really gives me
it's a different energy
satisfaction.
when you work on something that you love.
Exactly.
It's a completely different
it's,
energy.
it's physical fatigue. And the physical fatigue I can manage. The mental and emotional, of course, it happens, and then I just go through it. So
do you watch TV?
But sometimes. Not that I watch when I'm on planes.
What do you watch?
Often negotiation stuff.
Really?
Yeah, there was this beautiful, what was it called? I forgot the name, but it was about all the negotiations that happened between the White House and Israel and
God.
It was
I wouldn't want to watch that on a flight. On a flight, I want to watch like something emotional and cry. I like to cry on flights.
Good movies like that anymore. But there
you're always emotional in a flight.
Are you?
No, my friend once said it, and it stuck with me. And he said, "Our emotions run high when you're on a flight." I've cried watching movies on a flight. Yeah, I have.
Well, you're a human. That's good.
It was embarrassing, the guy sitting next to me and me trying to be subtle about it, moving my tears. But yeah, no, I like to watch.
I like real people with real emotions. Yeah,
that's what makes us
human. No, I definitely have to learn. I don't know if your other guests have tips on how do you switch off, but I guess obviously it's a choice, I have to switch off my phone at a certain point, but it doesn't.
I actually ask that. Some people work out, some people meditate, some people go on a hike, some people travel and take off.
Well, I don't know if that's called switch off, but I do take care of my health quite well. Besides the lack of sleep, which is killing me, and I admit it, I do eat healthy. I fast regularly. I don't really drink or smoke a lot. So
that's good. That's great. That's good.
And I work out. I recently started. I actually have a coach now.
Nice.
A personal
accountability person, so that you don't negotiate with yourself at 5 a.m. in the morning.
Exactly. I have an appointment. I'm going, and he doesn't let me negotiate with myself during. He's like, no, you're gonna do 10 more. So that's good.
Amazing. So unfortunately, we're coming to the end of the conversation. I usually end it with rapid fire questions. I'm gonna ask you a question. Shoot me whatever comes to your mind. Don't think about it. Let it come from the heart. Are you ready? Okay, I know the answer to this question, but if you had to wake up in a different city and place, where would you want to be and why?
In Dubai.
We talked about all the reasons why. One thing that people do not know about you. Could be an interest, a hobby, a guilty pleasure, anything.
People often think because I'm a speaker and an assertive negotiator, they think I'm an extrovert. I'm not. Definitely an introvert. So I prefer listening than talking. I prefer observing than being out there.
I wouldn't have guessed.
I prefer sitting at home than going to a party.
Really? I wouldn't have guessed because when you came, we chatted for a good half an hour, 40 minutes before we started the conversation. Yeah. I wouldn't have imagined that you'd be an introvert.
Well, introverts can be very social.
Yes. What's your definition of success?
Looking yourself in the mirror and being happy with what you see, physically, emotionally, behaviorally, integrity. Do what you do and like doing it, and like the way you do it. Nice
one. Fourth question. This is a hypothetical scenario. You are giving a speech and the whole world is tuning into your speech. Everyone's listening to what you have to say, and it's a pretty convincing speech. Whatever you're going to say, people are going to internalize and act on. And, you've got half an hour. What theme would you tackle in that speech, or what would the title of that speech be?
I would give tips. Guys, doesn't matter whether you want to listen or not. This is what I went through, and this is what I want to share. And I would simply state a few lessons that I've learned that have made a massive impact on my life. And the number one thing is accept what is.
Accept what is.
Accept what
That's
is.
The title of the speech. I like it. Accept what is.
Then I would go and say, have some peace negotiations with yourself. And that's going to involve first accepting what is, then forgiveness, self-forgiveness. Forgive yourself the heavy load of shit that you're blaming yourself, that you're still angry about yourself, all those things that you didn't reach but you want to reach, or that thing that you did back then. Forgive yourself. Let it go, or let it be, rather. Just let it be. It happened, and now we're moving forward. Then the next step is even harder. Love yourself. despite all those things, love yourself, be kind to yourself. And once you do that and you start connecting with your heart and with who you are, automatically you connect better with others. If you have empathy for yourself, that's when you start connecting with other people. But really from heart to heart, forget about the titles and everything. You connect from a human to a human. You become authentic and you see the beautiful imperfection in others. And that we're all here and we're all struggling and we all want the best for ourselves and for our children. And that's what we're all striving for. And connect to your heart so that you can connect to others' hearts.
Completely agree. I believe self-love is the basis of everything, of growth, of expansion. It's the thing that's going to get you to places. Last question is, what does Lousin wish to accomplish one day?
Oh, so much. I would like to write that book.
I
already know the title.
with a feather.
Exactly. And I know the title. That came in another vision.
I would like share it with us? No, don't share.
No, not yet.
Keep it to yourself.
I would love to give a TED Talk.
Nice.
So if anyone has contacts in that world.
That's so up your avenue. I feel like it's so easy.
I would love to give a TED Talk. And I would like to have the opportunity to continue to do what I do. Inspire people, teach about negotiations. And if there is a wish that I could just do like that, I hope there would be a cure found for Duchenne muscular dystrophy and for all the other rare diseases out there.
Of course. Thank you so much, Lousin, for this heartfelt, vulnerable conversation, for sharing your all with us. It was an amazing, amazing conversation. Some negotiations, a lot of emotion, a lot of heart.
Yeah, a bit of everything. Well done to you. Thank you for having me and for asking such meaningful questions and for having this podcast and showing the human part behind the beautiful titles of all the impressive people you have on your show.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to also have you here in my home and my space. Where can people follow your work on social media? Or
only on LinkedIn.
Only on LinkedIn. I was actually, you're not on Instagram, right? Only LinkedIn. Lousin Mehrabi.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Lousin.
You're welcome.
Hope you enjoyed this episode and that you were able to pick up a thing or two that could help you on your journey of growth. If you would like to hear more conversations like these, please do subscribe on YouTube or through your preferred podcast platform. You can also follow more content and get in touch with me on Instagram at oneday.thepodcast. Till next time.